At 0147 hours, operators at a Ukrainian launch site kicked off the mission, striking the Kirishi oil refinery parked 1,000 kilometers deep in Russia's Leningrad region. That single facility cranked through 6% of Russia's oil. In 3 hours, it'd be cranking through a big, fat zero. At exactly 0200, the lead operator hit the launch sequence from his vehicle already moving toward the tree line. The first FP-1 rips down its rail, wings bending like they might snap, lifting off at 80 clicks per hour. Every 15 seconds, another one followed suit, hooking northeast toward Russia. The operators were already 2 kilometers gone, tearing through forest roads pitch black. No lights, just NVGs. Behind them, the empty launch site sat waiting for the Russian payback that was definitely coming. All over Ukraine, the same drill went down at dozens of spots. Farm fields in Sumy, where operators popped up from hidden bunkers. Highway rest stops near Chernihiv, where trucks flipped open to show hidden rails. Factory roofs in Kharkiv, where guys in maintenance gear were actually drone operators. 361 drones going up in dead-on timing. But here's the kicker about this whole setup. The Kirishi package was launching last, even though it had the longest haul. They'd burn extra fuel hauling ass at 200 clicks, while drones hitting closer targets cruised at 150. This backwards game plan meant all 361 would show up in the same 20-minute window. Moscow, Bryansk, Smolensk, Rostov, Kirishi, everything getting smoked at once. Russian air defense brass would have to pick and choose what to save. What went down next showed why their whole defense playbook was busted from the start. Russian Podlet radars in occupied Donetsk caught the launches in seconds. These radars track a baseball at 60 clicks out. 35 drones climbing might as well have been signal flares. The data shot straight into Russia's air defense grid. Computers in Moscow started running the math for intercepts. Fighter pilots across Western Russia ran to their aircraft, but they were about to discover their entire defense doctrine had a fatal flaw. You see, Russia built their air defense to stop American B-2 bombers worth $2 billion. Their S-400 missiles cost $5 million each. Their fighters burn 10 grand of fuel per hour. But these FP-1 drones cost $50,000 to build. The economic math was breaking Russian doctrine. Fire a $5 million missile at a $50,000 drone, let it through, and risk a $1 billion refinery. Every option meant losing. Couple that with the fact that the FP-1 navigates using systems that can't be fooled. The primary receiver tracks both GPS and GLONASS satellites simultaneously. If American satellites say, "You're here," but Russian satellites say, "You're there," the drone knows someone's lying. But the clever part is the backup. Terrain contour matching. The drone's radar altimeter constantly measures ground elevation, comparing it to stored topographic maps. Even with both satellite systems jammed, the drone reads the shape of the Earth itself to know exactly where it is. The engine powering this weapon? A Chinese two-stroke you can order online tonight for $500. It produces 6.5 horsepower burning regular gasoline, giving exactly 1,600 kilometers range. Ukraine didn't develop exotic military technology. Hostile intent? The real strike package had opened a 40-kilometer gap. The decoys were working perfectly, pulling interceptors high while strikers slipped through low. But the drones had just entered the densest air defense network on Earth. Ahead waited the S-300 battery near Tikhvin with its infamous cheese grater radar. But what the Ukrainians knew that the Russians didn't was that this unstoppable radar had exactly one weakness. At 0400, the package approached Tikhvin, 200 kilometers from Kirishi. The S-300's 9S-19 M2 radar, the cheese grater, began tracking them. This radar seemed unbeatable. It frequency hops across the X-band 100 times per second. 8 gigahertz, 12 all ground clutter. At that height, radar bounces off everything: trees, buildings, cars, making electronic static that hides small stuff. Plus, the Earth curves. Radar goes straight, but the planet bends. At 50 meters up, a drone disappears from ground radar past 30 clicks. Physics doing the work for them. But here's why this formation was slick as hell. Each height layer beat a different Russian defense. High Mugen 5s would wake up the S-400s and S-300s, big strategic gear built for bombers. Middle UJ-22s would pull fire from tactical stuff. The low FP-1s would ghost through the gaps. And the vertical spacing meant no single missile could nail multiple targets. A missile going for something at 3,000 meters can't hit squat at 50 meters same time. Belarusian MiG-31 interceptors scrambled from Baranovichi Air Base. Their Zaslon M radars are among the most powerful ever fitted to fighters, designed to track B-52 bombers at 300 kilometers. But that power became a weakness. The radar uses narrow pencil beams optimized for high-altitude searches. Trying to find tiny drones at treetop level with a MiG-31 is like using a sniper scope to swat mosquitoes. The pilots locked onto the high Mugen 5s immediately, but doctrine required visual identification before engaging. By the time they confirmed legit 20-kilo warheads, others just wait to fly the same. Their mission? Eat missiles from Buk and Tor systems right in the face, draining Russian ammo before the real attack hit home. The FP-1 strikers dropped to 50 meters, vanishing into what radar guys call 10, 9, never the same frequency twice. You can't jam it, because by the time you react, it's already moved. But Ukraine had discovered its fatal flaw during previous strikes. Every 10 seconds, the system must recalibrate its frequency hopping sequence. For exactly 500 milliseconds, it stops transmitting. Half a second of blindness every 10 seconds. If you knew when that happened, you could disappear. One Mugen 5 climbed to 5,000 meters, deliberately triggering the radar. The S-300 engaged immediately, a $3 million 9M82M missile against a $50,000 drone. But in the 2 seconds before impact, the doomed drone transmitted the radar's timing pattern to the swarm. Its destruction provided the synchronization data they desperately needed. 27 seconds later, when the radar entered its reset gap, the remaining drones dove to 10 meters altitude. For half a second, they were invisible. When the radar resumed, they'd vanished into ground clutter. The operators saw ghost returns, maybe birds, maybe atmospheric anomalies. Without solid tracks, they couldn't engage. The swarm had slipped through during the blindness window, but they just entered Russia's electronic warfare zone, where GPS itself would betray them. The Pol-21 system activated, using a technique called Meaconing, recording real GPS signals and rebroadcasting them with delays. The drone's receivers showed them over empty fields, when they were actually over cities. 5 minutes of position data, all lies. But in the words of Monty Python, it was but a scratch. The FP-1 switched to backup navigation, magnetic heading, combined with counting power line crossings. Each major transmission line between the border and Kirishi was a waypoint, 7 lines total, following the Moscow-Petersburg energy corridor. The drones were literally navigating by counting infrastructure that couldn't move or be spoofed. 2 drones flew over an iron ore deposit that pulled their compasses 30 degrees off course. 3 more followed the wrong power lines toward Finland. But the lead drone's power line count matched expectations. It was on course for Kirishi. The package, now down to 24 drones, pressed on through thickening morning fog toward the refinery's glow on the horizon. At 0600, Kirishi's lights became visible, a glowing industrial city that never slept. 4 Pantsir batteries protected it, positioned for overlapping coverage. The 20 remaining UJ-22s split into their 5 groups of 4, each group targeting a different Pantsir. The operators watching their radar screens faced an impossible choice. Their systems could track all 20 drones, but each battery could only engage 4. Those 4 missiles would need 15 seconds to reach their targets. During those 15 seconds, they couldn't engage anything else without abandoning missiles already in flight. Ukraine had turned the Pantsir's precision into its weakness. 16 missiles launched simultaneously, their rocket motors lighting up the pre-dawn sky like an artificial sunrise. The UJ-22s started evasive maneuvers, but against missiles pulling 30G turns, physics favored the interceptors. 12 UJ-22s went down in spectacular fireballs, their sacrifice buying precious seconds. Because while those missiles flew their 15-second journeys, while the Pantsirs were blind to new threats, the FP-1 strikers sprinted through the gap. By the time the missiles impacted, the strikers were inside minimum range. The Pantsirs needed 45 seconds to reload. The FP-1s needed only 30 seconds to reach cannon range. The math favored the attackers. The Pantsirs switched to their twin 30mm cannons, firing ahead ammunition, shells containing 360 tungsten sub-projectiles. The fire control computer calculated refinery perimeter at 0618, walking straight into the Derivatsiya-PVO's kill box. Russia's brand new point defense system, sitting on a juiced-up BMP-3 chassis by the main gate. Its 57mm autocannon already dialed in on the incoming birds. This wasn't your standard flak setup. This monster was custom-built to mulch drone swarms exactly like this. The PVO spits programmable fuse shells, but here's what makes it brutal. A laser rangefinder nails exact range to each target, programming every shell as it leaves the tube. The shell spins and counts, detonating at the exact calculated range, not on contact, but right in the target's face. Each blast throws 200 tungsten balls in a 10-meter kill bubble. The drone flies into a shrapnel cloud it never saw. The system's computer was already running what they call barrage mode, overlapping kill spheres at staggered ranges: 300 meters, 250, 200, 150. A three-dimensional meat grinder nothing could penetrate. The barrel started tracking up, lining up the lead drone at 200 meters. But the PVO's engineers had hardwired a safety feature that was about to screw them. Below 100 meters, the tungsten could shred the refinery itself. Tanks would leak, chemicals would spill. The system meant to guard the facility could torch it instead. The safety was burned into the code. No override, period, even in combat. The PVO lit off at 0618. First shell popped 200 meters from the lead bird, too far to hurt it, but showed the pattern. Second shell at 180 meters. The computer was walking rounds in. Third would connect. The lead FP1 tried diving, but damaged controls lagged. Third shell detonated 8 meters out. The BLEVE shockwave punched 6 storage tanks at once. Emergency systems tried cutting off sections, but damage was everywhere. Pumps couldn't stop with no downstream pressure. Valves couldn't shut against backflow. The sprinkler system had zero pressure. Water mains cut by the first blast. The Kirishi Refinery, 355,000 barrels daily, 6.4% of Russia's capacity, was tearing itself apart from inside. Satellite photos proved what Russia lied about for days. CDU-100 wrecked. Catalytic cracker wrecked. 6 months minimum before partial ops. Full capacity? Maybe never. Russia said they shot down every drone. The firestorm you could see from orbit told what really happened. Bye for now. Manual override. Rejected. Tried direct fire. Blocked. The computer decided saving the refinery from friendly fire beat killing 2 drones. Wrong call. At 619, the first FP1 hammered the CDU-100 junction right where Intel marked it. 25 kilos of tetral went off at 7,900 meters per second, pushing 100 psi overpressure. The rusted supports gave out instant. Crude at 380 Celsius and 30 atmospheres blew from broken pipes. The superheated oil hit air and turned to vapor, a fuel-air bomb ripping through the whole complex. 10 seconds later, the second bird nailed Tank 47's bad seal. The built-up vapors flashed. The floating roof became a 50-ton missile, launched 200 meters on gas pressure before it crushed the admin building flat. 80,000 barrels of refined product now had no lid, feeding a fireball growing toward the sky. The CDU-100 failure chain-reacted through linked systems like dominoes set to drop. The Fractionator column, cut off from feed, had catastrophic pressure loss. Liquid hydrocarbons at 380 degrees flash-changed phase, a BLEVE, boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion. The column, 40 meters tall, split at the welds. The top part flew 800 meters like a giant spear. Secondary blasts ripped out. They took hobby shop parts and turned them into strategic weapons. The warhead, though, was military grade. 80 kilograms of tetral explosive that detonates at 7,900 meters per second, surrounded by steel balls that would punch through concrete at 200 meters. By 0215, the strike packages had merged into one massive swarm heading east. Russian radar screens showed 361 contacts converging on dozens of targets. The question wasn't whether Russia would detect them. They already had. The real question was whether they could stop them. At 0245, the Kirishi package reached the Belarusian border. The main swarm of 326 drones continued eastward toward Moscow and other secondary targets. This was the critical moment. 35 drones peeled north, threading between Belarusian defenses and Russian interceptors. If spotted right then, split off from the main swarm, they'd be dead meat. The package immediately broke into what Ukraine calls a ladder formation. The Mugen 5 decoys punched up to 3,000 meters, deliberately yelling on known drone frequencies. They wanted every radar in the area looking their way. These hacked-together commercial drones even packed radar reflectors, aluminum corner cubes making them look huge on screens. At 30 grand each, their whole reason for existence was dying first to save the real strikers. The UJ-22s held the middle at 1,500 meters. Some packed 200 tungsten balls ripped outward at 1,500 meters per second, faster than most bullets. The drone's plywood body came apart like paper. Fuel tank hold, engine torn loose. It tumbled through the air, raining parts over the refinery. Second drone hit 120 meters. The PVO's barrel tracked smooth, following perfect. At 110 meters, still shooting. At 105 meters, one round chambered. At exactly 100 meters, the system locked up. The barrel froze cold. That last shell went off harmless above the diving drone. The operator could see them clear, track them perfect, but the computer said, no way. He punched man each drone would be when shells arrived, creating clouds along predicted flight paths. But Ukraine had programmed random altitude changes every 2 seconds. Up 10 meters, down 5, up 3, down 8. No pattern for the computer to learn. The predictive targeting was firing at where drones should be, not where they were. 3 FP1s flew into tungsten clouds and disintegrated. Another caught the edge. Half its wing gone, but somehow still flying. The gyroscope compensating frantically. 6 FP1s cleared the cannon envelope at 500 meters from the refinery. The Pantsirs couldn't depress their guns any lower without hitting their own positions. They'd broken through the main defense. But the Russians had fresh hardware they'd been dying to test. 3 survivors breached the 200 tungsten balls ripped outward at 1,500 meters per second, faster than most bullets. The drone's plywood body came apart like paper. Fuel tank hold, engine torn loose. It tumbled through the air, raining parts over the refinery. Second drone hit 120 meters. The PVO's barrel tracked smooth, following perfect. At 110 meters, still shooting. At 105 meters, one round chambered. At exactly 100 meters, the system locked up. The barrel froze cold. That last shell went off harmless above the diving drone. The operator could see them clear, track them perfect, but the computer said, no way. He punched man